Hello, everyone. Welcome in our another webinar. This time we are joined by our colleagues from SlashData, and we will talk about the report we did together a few weeks ago. Now we have the report ready, and we can share the results and our thoughts about this. And we will speak about the future of cloud. And as we know, the market is dominated by US-based clouds, but the growing impact, let's say this way, of European competitors is seen and is bigger and bigger. How it looks, what we see, what customers see, and what our colleagues from SlashData who operated on numbers sees there, we will discuss today. And not making this longer, let me introduce Alvaro from SlashData, who is representing the team who created this report. So Alvaro, if you could say a couple of words about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Pavel, and thank you everyone for joining. I'm Alvaro from the research team at SlashData, and we partnered with UpCloud and we helped them with the design of this survey, reaching the target audience, as well as analyzing and then interpreting the results and putting all together into a report and this presentation.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And together with Alvaro, we have Miguel from UpCloud. Miguel, now the term is yours. Would you introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. This is Miguel here. Thank you all for joining. I am lead product manager for managed services at UpCloud, and I have about 18 years of experience in the software industry, and I'm here to share my thoughts on the findings of the survey.
Yeah, perfect. So we will have all possible angles, I would say, from this perspective to understand what we have in the report and probably even why we have those things in the report. So as I said, cloud adoption is accelerating. Still, of course, we hear many times that cloud is dead, what is not necessarily true, because clouds are quite stable, I would say, and they're growing. So let's jump to our first topic today. And we will talk about a couple of elements. So first of all, about the report itself, then about the findings. In the findings, we will discuss the rise of the European cloud, the data sovereignty, adoption of the European cloud providers, challenges in that, and also innovations, if there are any, and if they are, what kind of innovations we have. Finally, we share a couple of useful resources, and then on the end, I will have like a secret question to our speakers. Let's see what they will answer. All right, so the report itself. Alvaro, how could you describe the process of the whole report? What we see in the report, and what was the methodology of collecting this data?
Okay, so the first thing comes with scoping the report and knowing what the main objective was. So the main objective of this report was to get a better understanding of the current landscape, cloud landscape in Europe and the US particularly, and understand things such as what types of providers are organizations using, what are their top priorities when selecting a provider, what are the challenges that they're facing, and as well, what are their main priorities for the near future, probably next 1 or 2 years, what are they looking into, and what are going to be their main priorities related to cloud infrastructure and services. So in order to gather this information, what we did is we fielded a survey in earlier this year in May 2025. And after cleansing and everything, we reached out to 300 respondents. We received 300 responses from cloud decision makers, which these are professionals that are working for organizations with at least 5 employees and that are involved in the selection and purchase of cloud services. And then in terms of the sample composition, we were targeting an even split between Europe and the US, and we ended up with 55% of these cloud decision makers coming from Europe and the other 45% coming from the US. And well, we analyzed all those responses, and then we put a report together, which you can access. You can access the full report, and then in this presentation, we will be covering some of the key insights and the most important things that were covered in the report.
Perfect. All right, so let's go and see what we have inside. Our first, let's say, sharing thoughts, what we received is about the industry fundings, and we see that the rise of European clouds is there. Still, it is dominated market by US companies, of course, because the clouds are the biggest one and the most popular and are here for many, many years. But how can you interpret, Alvaro, this charts here?
Sure. So before we get into the numbers and the insights, let me first explain how we got this data. So we basically asked the respondents as cloud decision makers. We had a list of different European and US based providers, and we asked them to select the ones that they're currently using and the ones that they would like to use in the next 1 or 2 years. And then with that, we grouped them into 3 different groups. Those who are using or wanted to use only European CSPs, those who are only using US CSPs, and those who are using both European and US CSPs at the same time. And then to add more granularity, then we broke this down into 2 different charts, one for European organizations, and then the other one for US organizations. And as you were saying, we can very clearly see that US-based CSPs dominate the market. We see that for both European and US organizations, over 90% of them are using US-based CSPs. But we also see that there is a substantial group, both in Europe and in the US, that are combining both European and US CSPs. So 42% of organizations, both in Europe and US, and the US go for this hybrid approach. And this could suggest, and Miguel can probably share more insights here, that this could be due to factors such as regulatory pressures that are being bring up recently, data sovereignty concerns, or maybe just the need for more diversified and resilient cloud infrastructures.
That makes a lot of sense, really. But Miguel, from your perspective, because we heard and we see here hybrid approach, so multi-cloud, right, and all those aspects, how it looks from your perspective, as person involved in creating services, and also as person who observes the market, right? This because we see this rise of multi-cloud approach. Why is that, and what is your opinion about what we see here and what Alvaro said?
Yeah, sure. So there's a lot that I want to say about this slide. So there are things here that are let's say make a lot of sense, and then there are things that actually surprised me quite a bit. So, for example, on the
in this simple chart, right?
Yes, there's a ton here to drill into. So on the right hand side, if you focus on US based companies, that 0 and 1% of US companies using European only cloud providers, that makes absolute sense. No, I don't think any of us expected to see anything different out of the data, right? Then, of course, European companies, so in the middle of the right-hand side, European companies using, US companies using US-based cloud providers only, that makes a lot of sense, of course, as well. But then the last 2 columns to the right, that 42 and that 50%, I was very happily surprised to see that. I did not see that coming. So US companies, so those are US companies using or that are already including European cloud providers into the mix. That's 42%. And then that other 50% of companies that are also aiming to do it in the coming 1 or 2 years, that I think that tells you something. So for the longest time, it's been so when the technical community started talking about cross-cloud deployments or multi-cloud deployments, it was only the big 3. right? And always the big three. So you would always, people were using perhaps AWS, and they thought, okay, let's add Azure into the mix. Or they were using Azure and they said, okay, let's add Google Cloud into the mix. But to see now that actually that mix already includes European cloud providers is brilliant. Then
Agree.
moving to now, if we try and stick to the left hand side, just for the European companies, then that in the two bars most to the left, that 6 and 9%, that is, I guess, the historical distortion that we've inherited from the past 15, 20 years of the cloud, because cloud computing was born out of big US-based technology companies, right? And this is the challenge. This is what we are trying to break away from. So this European companies that are only using European cloud providers, these numbers are exceedingly low, right? Then the ones in the middle, so European companies using US-based cloud companies, those numbers, that 52% and that 40%, those are concerning, right? Because this is not something, let's say the availability of European cloud providers is not something new. And the world that we live in is one where we have some regulatory forces, opposing forces on one side and the other of the Atlantic. Like, for example, the U.S. Cloud Act, which is not new. It was passed back in 2018. So it's been in force for more than 7 years now. And then GDPR on this side of the Atlantic was passed also in May 2018, protecting personal information of European citizens. Then back in 2020, there was something called the Schrems II sentence, or which was essentially the EU Court of Justice passing sentence and saying there was something called the EU-US Privacy Shield, which was, let's say, the legal framework for US based data processors to be able to transfer data back to the US, even if that data belonged to European companies. And that was made void back in 2020. Right. Basically, the European Court of Justice said, so U.S. legislation does not provide the legal guarantees that comply or that are at the same level than EU law. Right. And it's been 5 years since that. And then this year, just a couple of weeks back, we have the new EU Data Act came into force, which says, and I quote, all adequate, so EU-based data processors must, again, I quote, make sure that they've taken all adequate technical, organizational, and legal measures in order to prevent international and third country governmental access and transfer of personal data held in the Union, right? So that means that if you hold data for EU citizens and companies, you have to take every feasible step that you can to make sure that data cannot be accessed by a third party or a foreign government, right? Now,
and to add to this, Miguel, sorry, it
yes.
is not just having bucket in European region. It's not enough.
Right. Exactly. It's not just that, because on the other side of the Atlantic, there is this U.S. legislation called the Cloud Act that says that the U.S. government can force a U.S.-based data processor to give them whatever data they deem necessary, provided that they have a court order. And of course, these vendors will have massive legal teams and they will try and fight that. But this is a national security. When national security is involved, I don't know that any one of them is going to be able to say no. So then, and then if you also take into account that I had to go back and see the raw data. So out of all the respondents in the survey, there is like 13% more or less financial services, 13% health and pharma, 17% manufacture, logistics and food, and even 5% government and transport, right? And to see that there's still 52% of European companies that are only using US-based cloud providers, that is both surprising and concerning. And I'll give you one more data point. There was so Paul, you and I were at Container Days a couple of weeks back, and there was a talk there by a couple of people who work for a large European rail, so infrastructure, right, transport organization. They handle railways and train operations for one of the largest EU country economies in the EU, right? And besides the talking points, at some point they mentioned in passing that they hosted all of their systems, all of their systems with AWS and Azure. And all of a sudden, the Q&A board just lit up, because every technologist there knew that was a red flag. All of a sudden, there were like the 3 top questions, and each one of them had like 10 to 15 upvotes, where basically, why are you hosting systems for strategically critical infrastructure on a foreign cloud, right? And I think if the technical community, if we as technologists are so aware, so tuned into the fact that this is a problem, then it's very hard. I think it would be very hard for decision makers in companies, in European companies, to be able to argue to European legislators, yes, we've taken every possible step to make sure that EU data cannot be illegally transferred overseas. I think this is just a matter of time before there's a scandal, and then and then maybe that things will change even more rapidly. But on the bright side, I think the silver lining is that, so to see that when we look at the rightmost 2 columns of that left-hand side of that slide, that 42 and that 50%, that's 42% EU companies already including EU cloud providers in their mix, and then another 50% wanting to do that in the next 2 years. I think that's a silver lining. I think that so hopefully with the new EU Data Act in place, what we'll see next year, if we run the survey again, which I hope we do, we'll see that 42% go all the way to maybe 60%, and that 50% going even higher. So I guess we'll have to wait and see.
I suppose, and I hope it will exactly happen what you said, Miguel, because I think that in many times before, those kind of changes and implementations of new approaches, new technologies were forced by not engineers, but for example, legal teams, and there was no option to not going with that. Here we still, even if you said that those regulations are here for a long time, are somehow hidden. I don't know, but this is my thought. And this leads us to another topic about data sovereignty and regulations, really. So now I will turn the table a little bit differently. So, Miguel, what is your opinion, and what are your takeaways from this chart, and what you can tell us about the perception about the data sovereignty and the recently gone data globalization and regulations?
Well, perhaps first Alvaro should explain the methodology behind this particular piece.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. Yes.
Yeah, of course. So this is just a follow-up question that we did. Regardless of the CSP they're using, we asked cloud decision makers where the servers that store their data are physically located. So someone that is might be using a US CSP, if the organization is based in Europe, they might want to still physically store their data in servers based in Europe. And what we see is that that's actually the most common approach. As you can see in the chart, the vast majority of organizations, at least 90%, store their data in servers that are physically located in their own region, regardless whether they're using a provider that is based in a different region. So this shows a very strong interest for keeping data close to home. But again, I think this raises a very important topic, and that's what you mentioned before, Paul, that simply storing the data physically in Europe might not be enough, right? With the Cloud Act and all these geopolitical, legal, and regulatory concerns, the fact that the data is just physically stored in Europe might not be enough.
Yeah, and I think that we are going forward. We think not only about the performance, because data closer to our users are faster delivered, but also this thing with the regulations and so on. So, Miguel, once again, what is your thought about this, and how would you interpret this data?
It just tracks. It makes all the sense in the world to see. So 90% of Europe-based companies host in Europe, and then 95% of US-based companies host in the US. That just makes sense. Of course, as Alvaro mentioned, regardless of which cloud provider you're using, the point is you're using a data center, a region, or an availability zone that is within your jurisdiction, or let's say your country. And it tracks a lot with what we see in UpCloud. In UpCloud, we have 13 data centers worldwide. But even if you just look at the data for the ones that are located in Europe, it is remarkable to see how well it aligns. So that, for example, companies who are registered in Germany largely use our Frankfurt data center. Companies who are based in the Netherlands use our Amsterdam data center, and so on. It is remarkable because these countries, so the EU is a patchwork of, well, some slightly bigger countries, but there are 27 countries in the Union, right? And a lot of them are are quite small. It would be very hard for any cloud provider to have a data center in each and every one, let alone two. But it's remarkable to see that, for example, we have also Swedish customers who, until we had a Swedish data center, they just wanted to, so they would host in Finland, but they wanted a Swedish data center, right? And we are now, it's already been announced. It's been, the announcement has been out for a couple of weeks, or if not more, I think. We are now launching 2 new data centers in Europe, one in Denmark and one in Norway. And that is in response to this ask from European companies, where they want their data in their country, not in the country next door. It doesn't matter how good friends they are with the country next door. They want their data in their country.
That is also a very interesting topic to see that, and it is very connected with what we see on this slide and what we saw on the previous one. And also there is another aspect which I don't want to go deeper into that, but we have also CDNs where data also is stored, and this is also an interesting topic. Maybe we should dig deeper into that next time. Let's see how it will go. Right. So with all of this, you mentioned about these new data centers and things like that. So let's see how the adoption of European cloud providers and also rejections and reasons for that looks like in our survey. So here also, Alvaro, I will ask you to share a little bit what happened behind the curtain and why we see what we see. And then, Miguel, prepare yourself to explain what we see.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we what you're seeing here is two different charts. So we asked those that are using or planning to use European CSPs what were the main three reasons that made them adopt one of these European providers, and then we had the other question, which was to those who are not using and are not planning to use European CSPs in the future, if there was any reason to not be using them, right? Specific reasons. Um, so yeah, what we find is that for those that are using European cloud providers, is that the main drivers are performance, data privacy, and residency, and security. And I think this shows a strong belief in the ability of European providers to deliver in these critical areas. And I'm saying they're critical because, as you will see in the report and throughout this presentation, they are the most commonly cited factors across many different questions. When we're talking about challenges, the main challenges that they face are also related to security, data privacy, and when they're talking about the priorities, we also see them repeated throughout this research. And I think before Miguel takes over, something interesting as well, looking at the other side, at those who reject European solutions, I think that it is interesting that 22% of them, so the most common reason cited, is that uh, the current provider just meets all needs. And further, 18% indicate that they don't have any specific reasons to avoid them. And I think this highlights a good opportunity for European providers to perhaps better articulate their value and attract these users that might be kind of in a neutral position. However, we also see that the most common reason to reject European cloud providers is the costs. And this might hint that there is a perception that European providers are more expensive or perhaps less competitive in price than global hyperscalers or other alternatives. And I think that the fact that only 15%, going back to the left chart, cite cost as one of the main reasons for adoption also signals that this is not one of the main strengths or drivers for European clouds.
Anyway, I would argue with this like perception that European clouds are that more expensive. But Miguel, I think you have already prepared answer for especially this.
Yeah. So let's see. The findings of this particular question really boggled me. So part of it, I mean, there's a lot in this slide that makes a lot of sense, and there's stuff that I found a little bit confusing. The results, not the presentation itself. So let's see. For example, the fact that 28% of respondents cite data privacy and residency as a reason to adopt European cloud, that makes absolute sense. It aligns perfectly with what we'd expect to see.
What we just said, right?
Yes. And also, so 25% citing reliability and 22% citing technical support. It makes absolute sense. To give you an idea, so we have exceedingly good CSAT and NPS scores, and we have amazing support. And I want to give a shout out to our support team, who are, the best you could possibly find in the industry. Some of the best feedback that we get when we survey our customers is precisely because the quality of the support is so good. And I don't know what that says about the support that you might get with hyperscalers, but ours is great. So all of that makes a lot of sense. Now, the things that don't make or confuse me, and I would like to ask Alvaro for his take on this, are, for example, that performance is cited by 29% of respondents as a reason to try to move over to European providers. But then there is also the third top reason, albeit the numbers are lower, but the third top reason for rejecting European cloud providers is performance concerns, right? And then 28% cite security, but then 17% cite security concerns. And I honestly, from a survey methodology or statistical point of view, I have, well, this is not my area of expertise, but I don't know how to read this. What's your take, Alvaro?
Yeah, well, you have to bear in mind that we are asking two different audiences here. One is those who are using, those who reject it. And I think that what happens here is that this happens for both, as you said, for both performance and security. We're seeing that they're cited among the most common reasons to both adopt and avoid European CSPs. And I think this just highlights how perceptions can vary dependent on context. And for example, uh, focusing on the right-hand side on the red bars, we see that those in the, this is not shown in the chart, but doing analysis, we found that those in the US express more concerns with European cloud performance than those based in Europe. And same thing happens with security. So I think this highlights that these perceptions of performance and security are shaped not only by technical benchmarks, but it might also depend on project needs, user location, regulatory requirements, and maybe even the scale of the provider's infrastructure and services.
Yeah, that makes
Okay.
sense. And
Yeah, it makes
really,
sense.
what put me into like a big question mark was what you said on the beginning, Alvaro, that you addressed the decision makers, right? So we have like 1% on the adoption side and 6%, 8% on the reject side. That I don't know. That is something a little bit scary for me. Anyway, Miguel, do you have any other takes for this information here?
Well, perhaps one last thing is that on the right hand side, so reasons to reject, 20% being cost. I would point out that, or try to clarify for people watching this who might have that perception, that European cloud actually has, in general, a very competitive pricing as compared to US based hyperscalers. At UpCloud, for example, it was so we always take care to make sure that we are not that we're not pricing ourselves out of the market, that our pricing is super competitive and super attractive. And recently, we don't say this enough, but recently I had a conversation with a colleague of mine who is a Kubernetes expert. I was asking him for some feedback about our product, and we were discussing what the setup that he's used to look like. And he was telling me that the company that he works for spends north of 200K per month in cloud, in cloud computing, and their cloud invoice with a hyperscaler. And then roughly 10% of that was just for the egress fees, right? So just for reaching out into the internet and downloading packages or transferring data out into outside of your of your cloud account, that is costing them approximately 20K per month. When I mentioned that in UpCloud we do not charge egress fees, he wouldn't believe me. I had to show him in our website, and it blew his mind away. Right. So I think that maybe so this perception that European cloud providers are somehow more costly, I honestly don't know where that comes from, but it's certainly something that we need to try and address. So set the record straight and actually be more vocal about this, and show companies out there and decision makers out there that actually our pricing is very competitive.
And this also gives the more stability in the bills, right? Because outgoing traffic depends on the incoming traffic as well. So you can't really say how your bill will look next month. And also, I had the similar experience just after I joined. I spoke with one person who, maybe not that just like one day, but a couple of weeks, who turned out is working for FinOps team. So the costs are important for them because they have to explain them. And when I said something like, by the way, we do not charge for egress, it was like, what? I want it, right? So definitely, yes, we have things in our offerings which are not only competitive but really, really changing the landscape. All right, so let's continue and let's see what we can say about more about the adoption, right? So at UpCloud, as you already, Miguel, mentioned, we have some focus, right? If you could explain a little bit what we mean by this performance, freedom, and commitment.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the easier one from the right hand side. So data sovereignty is one of our it rests at the core of our value proposition, right? We are 100 European owned. Most of our data centers are in Europe, and we take data sovereignty, transparency, and trust very, very seriously. Then the one to the left, performance first. So we have a brilliant team of engineers all around, right? And one of the main subjects of discussion in every session where engineers are involved is the performance. We of course try to keep an eye on that from the product management point of view, but it's surprising to me how keenly aware our engineers are of the importance of having top-notch performance across our systems. Because you might say, well, the development is done, we've built it, and it runs, and it fires up, it checks all the boxes in terms of functionality. But to have it perform, to be as fast as it can deploying, to be to give you the best throughput, to give you the lowest latency, those are things that we take also very, very seriously in UpCloud. And then the one in the middle, in terms of freedom, delivering freedom from vendor lock-in, this goes hand in hand with our support for open source. So everything we do, everything in our offering is open source. To give you an idea, so one of our main areas of focus, and I should say so because I lead managed services, is Kubernetes. Kubernetes is I think the foundation for every new modern development. If you are building applications on raw virtual machines, you should definitely go check out the value proposition for Kubernetes. You'd be amazed of the problems that it will solve for you. But then on top of that, it's I would say it opens the door for a whole new level of freedom in terms of you being able to deploy your application confidently in this cloud, that other cloud, on premise, wherever you want it, and know that it will just run the same way across all of those environments, right? So, and this rests at the core of our value proposition in managed services. And then the other thing is, again, doubling down on open source. We very recently just so I don't know if the people watching this are aware, but Redis, this super popular in-memory key value store, so it recently went through a change in its licensing, right? And it's no longer considered to be open source, right? Or free and open source. So what we've done is we've essentially replaced that support for Redis with support for Valky, which is a fork of the Redis project and is the new, let's say, free and open source, or truly free and open source drop-in replacement for Redis. And those I think are just two key pieces of information to give you an idea of what our level of commitment is to freedom and freedom from vendor lock-in.
Yes, and to add to this, we can say that Valky is growing really fast. We can say that. And to add to what you said about engineers, Miguel, I would say even we have also great and bright managers. So yeah,
Thank
lucky
you.
we. So let's continue because we already are here for a longer time, and let's talk a little bit about the challenges in managing cloud services. So we have different challenges here with managing the services, right? And those challenges are like well known, I would say. But Alvaro, if you could explain us why this colorful chart and what we should see in it.
Okay. Yeah. So as you were saying, we asked these cloud decision makers what are the main challenges or concerns they face when managing their or using their cloud infrastructures, if they have any challenges. And we broke this down by company size because the challenges that a small company face can be very different to those that large enterprises face. And the reason why you're seeing this colorful heat map, it can be can look like a lot of data, but it's actually really easy to read. So the percentages are calculated as columns. So when we say when you see in more than 1,000 employees and scalability at or difficulty in predicting and controlling costs at 31%, that means that 31% of cloud decision makers in large enterprises are facing this challenge. And then the color scale is based on the row. So this being darker than the other cells means that larger organizations are much more likely to be facing difficulties in predicting and controlling costs than smaller organizations, which I think tracks due to the larger scale and complexity of their operations and cloud structures. Yeah, just taking a look at this color patterns, you can see how different challenges change based on organization size. And I think it's also interesting to see the last row, which is the share of these decision makers that say that they don't face any major challenges, and how smaller companies, those with 5 to 50 employees, are less likely to be facing challenges. And it's actually probably due to the opposite of what I just commented, with smaller companies having simpler infrastructures and therefore simpler processes, and being less likely to face any of these challenges.
Yeah, got it. And Miguel, like one main takeaway from this for you, what like brought your attention?
Well, it's hard to get one takeaway here. I'll give you two takeaways
Perfect.
and one question. So
Okay.
okay. So the one, for example, or rather, no, one takeaway, one question. So let's see. The second row, data privacy and residency. The fact, so if you look, you'll see that there is the kind of almost grows the importance placed on this kind of almost grow. So yeah, it grows with the size of the company. It goes from 18 to 23, then it goes a little bit down to 21%. I don't know. I'll choke it up to errors, statistical errors, and then it goes up to 25%. This is what I would expect to see for data privacy, because the bigger you are, the more complex your systems are, the more data you manage, the more this is a concern.
Yeah.
But however, on the first row, we see security and vulnerabilities. It starts at 14%, goes up to 28% for 51 to 51 employees to 1,000, and then goes down again to 13%. I did not expect to see that. I would expect to see that the bigger you are, the more you, let's say, of a target you have on your back. So the more security would be a concern. So I don't know what to read into this. Alvaro, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it is also true that the bigger you are, the more resources, dedicated resources, and teams that you have fighting against security vulnerabilities. So the thing with medium-sized companies, so that 51 to 1,000 employees, where we see the highest incidence of these challenges, could be related to companies that are growing, that are scaling, their infrastructures are growing, they're becoming more attractive targets, but they still don't have the processes, teams, and people. Maybe specialists, security specialists, fighting against all these threats. And that's why we might see a bigger incidence of security vulnerabilities in these growing companies, scaling companies, medium-sized companies, than in larger, more established companies that might already have all these dedicated resources to fight this.
Actually, it makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so for me also, I saw this kind of drop for the biggest companies in a few other categories as well. But this explanation you gave, Alvaro, makes sense for them as well. So yeah, you have more like power to fight those challenges, right? So that make a lot of sense to me. Okay, so now let's jump to the very interesting topic, innovations and emerging technologies. Of course, AI is everywhere and AI is leading. But for me personally, I was surprised that the lead is not that big. So Alvaro, do you have any takeaways here? And do you have any answer why it's that small difference?
Yeah. Well, as you say, AI is at center stage today, and of course, we expect it to be a big priority. But also, as Miguel was mentioning before, um, technical people are very focused on performance when it comes to cloud services and scalability. And yeah, AI is one of the key priorities that we see. It's the most common one, with 1/3 of cloud decision makers saying that they want to integrate AI into cloud infrastructures and processes in the next 1 or 2 years, so in the very near future. But still, things like scalability and performance will remain important, because organizations still need the infrastructure that can flexibly support the growth and deliver consistently high performance, enable them to remain agile and resilient, especially in a context of rapid change like today's. And with AI, yeah, you're going to integrate AI into your cloud infrastructure and processes, but that needs to be also backed by performance and scalability if you want it to perform. And just one small detail here is that we see that when comparing the US and Europe, we see that the trend for AI is far more pronounced in the US. There 40% say that integrating AI will be a priority in the next 1 or 2 years, compared to only 28% in Europe. So I think this also highlights the US's stronger investments and maybe more aggressive approach to AI integration.
I like your explanation, but I'm curious what Miguel thinks about exactly this.
Yeah, I'm very curious about that, because then, well, I also expected to see integrating AI into cloud infrastructure and processes being, or having more of a lead, right? I suspect if we had run this survey a year ago, the lead would be much bigger. My read into this was, well, there's a lot of noise now in the industry, sort of suggesting, and there's a lot of talk about an AI bubble that is somehow about to burst. I think that we, of course, like the rest of the industry, are reacting to this AI trend by we recently incorporated GPU support, both for VM offering as well as for our Kubernetes one. And we are seeing a lot of usage of that already. There's a good chance that the industry is going into, I don't know if you've ever seen that Gartner report where they try and paint these technology waves. Yeah, I think they call it the wave. I'm not sure now, but there's an upward trend, and there's a cliff of disillusionment. Anyway, so I think it might be that companies are realizing that they need to simply get back to basics, right? So yes, now you have to incorporate AI. It has to be an integral part of your technology strategy, but you cannot forget about the fact that your systems need to be able to scale, that they need to perform, that you need to optimize cost, that there was already, let's say, a pre-existing groundswell in terms of trying to adopt hybrid cloud, and these trends are still there, right? For the longest time, AI kind of like monopolized the headlines, but I think decision makers are to a great extent going back to basics. Of course, Alvaro's explanation now of that breakdown on how that behaves for US based versus EU based companies might also explain it in the sense that these two things just even each other out. I don't know, but this is my read.
Yes, and my thought also is that we don't really know what the respondents had in mind, right? Because like 1 year ago, 2 years ago, we heard very often AI, then something, right? For example, performance, scalability, something like that. We use AI to help us to make better scalability approach. Now maybe we can hear we want better scalability, and in the parentheses we hear that they want to do it using AI, right? So maybe this is like a little bit shift in the focus, but AI still is there. I don't know as well. So that's my like question. Alvaro, did you went a little bit deeper into that, or this is something what is like you know something what we can do with the next survey to go deeper?
Yeah, no, that's actually something that wasn't covered in this report, but that we could actually cover in the next survey. But I think something important to clarify is that in this question, we asked respondents to select the top 3 options. So this was a limited selection. And for example, if we had asked about what is the top priority, just limited to 1, then we might have seen very different results. But since we are giving them the chance to select up to 3 options, then yeah, as you say, they might want to integrate AI, but they still want the basics, as Miguel was mentioning, of scalability, performance, optimizing spending. So yeah, we have to bear in mind that respondents were able to select up to 3, and we're not just limited to that top priority.
And that's perfect. That's perfect because we now can understand a little bit more what are the like more than one priority. This is very good to know because one priority is always hard to select. Okay, let's continue. And for the useful resources, we give you the link and the QR code to the full report. There are a couple of more charts than we show you today. So download it, read it, and if you have any questions, if you have any comments, and you want to share your opinion, you agree with the report, you don't agree with the report, or you want to say that we did, or like Alvaro and the team did a really great job doing this report, please share it on the social medias of SlashData or UpCloud, and let us know. Let us know what you think about this report and our findings. And let's stay in touch. So before we say goodbye, I have one tricky question, or maybe 2 tricky questions to each of you. Miguel, what was the most surprising for you in this report, and what is your biggest takeaway? What you think is something what really should power us?
Well, I think that for me, the biggest surprise was to find that out of all respondents, specifically for US-based companies, there is such a large portion of those already adding European cloud providers to the mix. That the number was 40%, 42%, if I remember correctly. 42% of US companies are already adding European cloud to the mix, and then that other 50% of European cloud companies saying, but we want to incorporate European into the mix in the coming 2 years. That I think that was brilliant. It was I was very happily surprised see that. And then my one key takeaway out of survey is the European cloud is here to stay. It's a reality. It's growing ever more rapidly, and you should, if you're a key decision maker, or you are in a position, maybe you have a technical role and you are in a position to advise and try to make recommendations towards decision or for decision makers, then you should be seriously considering adding European cloud to your mix.
Perfect. Thank you for this your thoughts, And Alvaro, another question to you. So you did the report, you did the survey, you went through all of those aspects. Is there something what you missed preparing the report, reading it, and you would like to add to, let's say, the second edition of the survey?
Yeah, sure. So I think something very interesting that we could do, we could focus more on and dig deeper in is AI, right? We see that AI is going to be is actually one of the priorities for the next 1 or 2 years. So I think something that we missed and something that we might want to include next year or next time we run this research is more specifically how decision makers and how organizations are integrating AI into their infrastructure and processes. And I think more importantly also what returns or what are the results that they are obtaining with AI. So we are at a point where many people are already integrating AI or thinking of doing it. So I think it would be good to have data on what results those who have already implemented and measured the results, what type of results are they getting in terms of maybe efficiency, in terms of performance, in terms of cost savings. So yeah, measuring, having some kind of measure of the impact of AI integration.
Perfect. That will be very interesting. Folks, Alvaro, Miguel, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your insights. Please remember, all of you who are watching this, you can find us together, SlashData and UpCloud, on different social media. Observe us, subscribe, comment, like, and try our services as well. We are waiting for your comments for the report, and we would like to hear your opinions, and let's see together in the next webinar. Alvaro, Miguel, thank you very much. Thank you very much, all of you, for watching this episode. See you next time.